Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Wayne Lou. This is the Raptors Reaction Podcast presented by Betway for all your sports betting activities. Hit the QR code that you see here on the screen or follow the link that is listed in the description of the episode. Raptors lose tonight by a score of 125 to 118 against the Dallas Mavericks. To be honest, I got to say, it really wasn't as close as the final score seemed. Raptors did obviously make a really nice push in the second half, but Dallas thoroughly comfortable in this game. Some genuine acts of sorcery performed by Luka and Kyrie Irving. Kyrie with the three-point shooting, Luka with the passing, and then Luka with the three-point shooting. I mean, just the two of those guys are like, I feel like Basketball Genius is like underselling how good those guys are. But Raptors did at least take advantage of the fact that Dallas looked comfortable. Some good adjustments made too. I thought Darko made a couple subtle defensive adjustments that, at least for a time, slowed down the Mavericks offense just enough for Toronto to get hot in the right moments. And you got to see Gradey Dick just absolutely lack no confidence whatsoever. One thing about Dick, he is just never shy. He is just popping out and he's just like shooting anything in sight. And that almost got the Raptors to a point where it might have been a tie game towards the final minute there. Gradey coming off a screen and knocking down a heavily contested three. Gradey taking two dribbles, pulling up from the mid-range. That was great. Prior to that, Jonathan Mobo, the rookie, knocking down two threes on the top of the floor. And the reason that's significant is because, I mean, this is a very much emerging shooter. And, both times was kind of late shot clock. He kind of had no other options. But I believe those are the first two, like, top of the break threes, above the break threes that he's made in his career. Those were huge. Kelly Olynyk returning to the lineup, be able to sort of pop some threes. Basically, the Raptors caught fire from three. Scottie knocked down a three. Another one that was a foot in the line, almost back-to-back threes. And that, coupled with Jakob Poeltl making a couple of mid-range jumpers, like, Raptors really made this a game. And it got to the point where towards the end, the Raptors obviously had a pretty unfortunate sequence. To be honest, you know me. Like if I feel like the referee, just like screwed the Raptors, I will definitely come on here. I will say it. The whole their names are rant that used to be in the past. Like, trust me, like I will not sit back and just like let the Raptors get screwed here. But I don't think this was a screw job towards the end. I think the Raptors just really unfortunate because when the score was 120 to 115 for Dallas, Raptors had the ball on the break. Scottie had a chance to score at the rim, missed it because he was blocked. Then Jakob got the putback, missed it because it was blocked. Now, it was initially called a goaltend, but that was reviewed on the sideline there. The referee saw that it actually wasn't a goaltend. Derek Lively just managed to record two miraculous blocks within like 5 seconds, basically. Then that became a jump ball because nobody had the possession of the ball after the goaltend was called. The Raptors lost that jump ball because Derek Lively again won a jump at and won the jump ball. And then the ensuing play, like, you know what? Yeah, it was a delayed call. It could have been a no call, no problem. But at the same time, you just had a kind of a nothing play where PJ Washington was trying to like get it to the next action, was trying to dribble across the lane. Davion Mitchell kind of bumped him, but he also just like fully tripped over his own feet, slipped over. And once a guy falls, it's like it's a lot easier for like just your reaction to click in and be like, okay, that's a foul. And of course, once the referee called that foul, even though Darko kind of looked at his bench, didn't really get a great reaction, just immediately decided, you know what, I'm just going to go off my gut here and challenge it. It certainly wasn't quick enough where like the arena would have showed a replay or anything, but he just called for the challenge. The challenge was quite quick. Referee saw that Davion Mitchell did indeed bump PJ Washington. Again, it wasn't enough to like, knock him over or anything like that. But again, when you have the call on the floor, it's going to take a lot of evidence to overturn that. Like in the previous instance where they thought it was a goaltend, but when you see the ball go up and it hadn't touched the backboard yet, clearly that's, and it wasn't a floater either. So it wasn't like on the way down either. That's pretty easy to sort of overturn, but that's pretty clear and conclusive evidence to overturn. When you go to the monitor and you do see that Davion does bump him, that just ultimately did not lead to a change in call. Of course, it doesn't help, obviously, when the broadcast is talking so much about, like, the Raptors got screwed here. Let's look at the next 2-minute report. Like, I love my guys, Matt and Jack. Actually, Jack's coming on the episode, coming on the podcast next week. So, like, these are my guys, but I just don't agree with it. Like, the Raptors certainly did not, shoot a lot of free throws, especially compared to Dallas. I think the free throw disparity here tonight was 37-18. So that's a doubling of the free throws. But also at the same time, like, did you watch this game? Raptors committed a lot of sloppy fouls, and Dallas is Dallas. Like, it's not like they got reputation calls here. Like, the Raptors just weren't really able to execute defensively for the bulk of the game. But at the same time, like, really positive toward the end where the Raptors are able to catch fire, and come back and make a game of it at the end. Of course, like, similar to many games at the start of the season, the Raptors were in it. Some of the young guys were playing pretty well. They were obviously punch above their weight. And then, towards the end, when the game got close and it was like, game-winning time, the Raptors obviously made way too many errors. And, I mean, even today, I would say they were even a bit unlucky. Like that Mitchell call could have been a no call. But again, like, that's pretty much it. But I don't think the referees were actually wrong in any of that stuff. Regardless, though, it was actually a pretty fun game. I mean, it's certainly one of those where it's like you wish you were there for this, because the type of performance that you saw from Luka and Kyrie was just out of this world, like what they were doing with the basketball. But of course, this is a Raptors show, so we are going to put that off to the side. We'll come back to that and just come back to some of those spectacular plays and focus on the Raptors. So number one, not the headline here, but Kelly Olynyk did return to the lineup. He made his debut this season. He came in around the 4-minute mark there of the first quarter, got a nice ovation from the crowd there. And yeah, I mean, I think immediately, of course, you see him taking away the minutes from Chris Boucher. Chris had been sort of on a downward slide for the last week or so, and it kind of really coincided with Kelly being able to come back to fitness and actually play. And I think obviously, like, Kelly's not going to make every shot every game, but it is pretty damn great to have a 7-footer who can, reliably knock down threes. He was 3 of 3 from 3 tonight, 4 of 4 from the free throw line. I think still physically, maybe still a little bit step slow. He dealt with the back issue. He's not, and he's also 34. He's not exactly known to be a leaper in the first place, but it did feel like maybe at times he wasn't, competing as hard for the rebounds and the physicality aspect of the game. But in terms of the skill aspect, you see, I mean, even watching Kelly warm up and stuff, this guy has a warm up where he does a crossover step back for 3. And it's like the fact that he practices that shot as a 7-footer is pretty impressive. And yeah, I mean, obviously the guy can give you an option on the pick and pop. The guy obviously can facilitate, throw you from the elbows. He did that a little bit today. It was kind of a adjustment between him and Jonathan Mobo. Those were the two bigs that came off the bench for you. Of course, it's also quite nice when your two backup bigs come off the bench and they go a combined 5 of 5 from 3. Like, that really helps. And I mean, I wouldn't say that that's a 5-out lineup, because I think Mobo is still clearly a developing shooter, but still in a game like this tonight, I mean, they really helped, especially when the Raptors are making that comeback towards the end of the third quarter and to the majority of the fourth quarter. So it was nice to get Kelly back in the lineup. The Raptors continue to get healthier and healthier. Of course, the other guy that they got back in the lineup this week was Gradey Dick. And man, I'm just so excited to watch Gradey these days. This felt like a continuation of what he did at the start of the season. Gradey is not shy. This man is shooting, and he is shooting his shot no matter what. Like, he's the guy in your DMs. He's literally shooting his shot no matter what. 21 shots tonight in 34 minutes to lead all of the Raptors players. And why not? Because, down the stretch there, when the Raptors were going to the basket, having very little success, right? RJ missing the shot there. Yak missing the shots there. I mean, Yak got fouled a couple times going to the rim, and great on Yak for continuing to be a really solid knockdown shooter. He was 6 of 6 from the free throw line, which is just pretty incredible on his part. Very underrated portion of the season is that Jakob is shooting a really good percentage, despite obviously shooting the one-handed free throws. So shouts to Jakob, but Raptors in general weren't getting success going to the basket. However, they were getting great looks when they were shooting from the perimeter, and especially from the top. Moving from the corners, the Mavericks are pretty much staying at home. But Raptors had those spaces. And when when Dallas, who played a lot of zone and played a lot of zone tonight, when they're playing that zone, the Raptors did a great job of finding that space in that mid-range. Both Jakob, Walter, and Gradey Dick showcasing what it looks like when they can curl, attack with a head of momentum off a dribble handoff, take 2 hard dribbles, gather themselves, and then rise up in the mid-range. It's almost refreshing to see that in today's game, because like sometimes it's like so much about the threes and so much about the layups. And of course, overall efficiency wise, like that is sort of like, what gets you the best shots maybe in the aggregate, but also in the specific moments when teams are specifically dropping like that. the best basketball decision, even to me, still like is still to take the most open shot, and that mid-range space where Jakob was able to pull up from, where Gradey was able to pull up from. Those were really good shots, in my opinion. And yeah, I mean the Raptors, basically caught fire and they started, knocking down from three. I also think defensively they did a couple nice things that were like, pretty influential in this game. Obviously, of the bulk of the game was like Kyrie early on. Kyrie was just like, I mean, Kyrie early on, I think he knocked out like 4 threes in the first quarter. He knocked down 3 in a row at one point. Like it was basically like immediately asserting his dominance over this game as Dallas went off to a 35-28 lead after the first quarter. Then of course you got Luka, who was kind of doing great stuff in the middle of all that too. But some of the passes that he made in this game was it's just absurd, man. It was absurd. Like I feel like both Kyrie and Luka were handing out like welcome to the NBA moments. Like maybe years from now, when like these guys get on podcasts and they're like, hey, what was your welcome to the league moment? Basically, one of the 2 go-to player pod questions is like, what was your welcome to the NBA moment? And 2, what's your Kobe memory? Like it's crazy. Like that's like almost formulaic the way all the pods do that one. But like the welcome to the NBA moment could very easily be for Jonathan Mobo. Okay, so he's guarding up Luka Doncic. Okay, and he cuts him off on the drive the first time. Luka on the end of that drive tries to go for up fake. Mobo stays down. Then he resets, gets the ball back, tries to go at him again. Stops, cuts off his drive once again. This time doesn't even let him get all the way to the basket. Up fake again, spin, stays right there. Everything is right there. He's like, oh my God, I've stopped Luka Doncic, or at least forced him into a difficult shot. And instead, Luka on the spin sees that Kyrie's behind him and sees that Davion Mitchell is coming up a little bit towards him. Upon finishing that rotation of the spin, feels a little bit of the bump from Davion from behind, and he throws a pass over his head, like over his shoulder, behind himself, somehow like perfectly to Kyrie in the shooting pocket. Like it's absurd. And it's like Mobile literally did everything you could possibly want, not just for a rookie, not just for like a good defender. Like that's textbook perfect defense that you can do. You've cut off 2 Luka Doncic drives. You've stayed down on 2 up fakes. You resisted swiping. You resisted the spin move. You resisted the bump into you and everything like that. You ate all of it. And this guy has the audacity and the skill to throw a pass over his shoulder to Kyrie, and who knocks down the 3, of course. It's like stuff like that was just ridiculous. Or one play where Luka tonight throws a bullet. Like this guy's bringing the ball up. Obviously, like he's not running that fast, right? He's just bring the ball up. He's not even cross half court. And the Raptors are pretty much back. They're like mostly back. And honestly, like if you're guarding in transition, if you're Davion Mitchell, who is the one who like essentially allowed this to happen, so quote unquote, he's the last man back. He's like in the corner. And it's like, okay, I'm like, you have the chance to either cheat a little bit towards the basket just to prevent any cuts, or stick like hug right up in the corner. But like, how is anybody going to make a pass behind the half court line, throw a bullet pass? It's not like, Mitchell was like all the way under the rim or anything. He's at the edge of the paint. And so he's like basically playing both things at once. Luka just happens to throw a perfect chest pass that's like 50 plus feet directly into the shooting pocket for Klay Thompson. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe you want to stick a little closer to Klay Thompson, but it's like, yo, that pass is never being made by like every other NBA player. And yeah, it's just stuff like that. That was crazy to watch, man. So of course, like, yeah, Dallas was able to build a huge lead. At the same time, though, I think for the Raptors, like, number one, I think the shots that they were getting were actually okay. Dallas is a pretty good defense, and namely, they have like pretty big players across the board. I thought their rim protection was quite good. That's ultimately sort of like the biggest play of the game for me was, I mean, aside from Luka throwing the pass over his shoulder, was just like Derek Lively coming up with those 2 blocks at the rim and then winning the jump ball. Like that made it from it being a 3-point game with a minute left to making it a 5-point game. And that's just absolutely huge in crunch time. But like Lively was really good at protecting the basket. Daniel Gafford had a number of blocks as well. I think some of that speaks to the inexperience for the team as well, because there were some of these, like, whether that was Jonathan Mobile going to the basket or Jacoby Walter going to the basket, as well as those guys did shooting from the perimeter. And on the defensive end too, I thought they competed really hard. Again, like just to no avail. But those guys, when they were going to the basket, needed to figure out a different way to finish or just make a different read, because the way that Lively and Gafford were just swatting their shots, it was making it so difficult. Like even Scottie had a very hard time scoring at the basket in this game, especially off the dribble. Like he missed a number of those chances. Or RJ, who, maybe started this game off well to begin with, but certainly the second half was like very little to hear from him. And ultimately barely even got back into the game after picking his 5th foul. I'll discuss that in a bit too, because I actually think that this is a pretty important game for RJ to learn from. But yeah, just in general, man, like this was this was a difficult matchup in terms of going to the basket. Having said that, though, the Raptors figured out a couple things. Number one, like one way that they can pull and occupy the centers is to just give the ball to their own center, right? They got the ball to Jakob a lot more, I felt like, in the second half. And Jakob was able to either, just at least occupy the attention of the centers behind them. And that's where the cuts behind for Gradey, for RJ, those were sort of much more freed up once they got the ball to Jakob. It was a lot harder for them to sort of like drive it all the way from the 3 into the lane and then, not be met there by these great shot blockers, right? But, when you have the pass to the middle of the floor and then you're able to cut off the ball, it's a lot harder for them to react and then get up and block the shots. So I thought, number one, that was a good sort of like, I guess, mid-game adjustment by the Raptors to sort of just use Jakob more. I also thought it was impressive on Jakob's part to be like, okay, you guys are big too, but I'm the same height as you guys, and I got skill, and I'm having a career year too. Like, how about I just take it strong to the lane and finish myself? It's like, fine, maybe my guards can't finish over you, but like I'm the same height, and you're not blocking me. Well, I mean, except for when Lively did block him, but like, you know what I mean? Like that's what he was doing, and he was taking it strong to the rack. He was finishing. Of course, and when he wasn't finishing, he was getting fouled, and he was making those free throws. So I thought Jakob was actually just a huge part of this game. And of course, the Raptors also figured out like, okay, yeah, obviously we need to sort of knock down some shots from the perimeter. And that's why sort of the Raptors were able to come back into it. The other thing too that I thought was super important in this game was just the subtle adjustments defensively. The Raptors obviously could not contend with the pick and roll attack from Dallas. And so they obviously had to switch a couple of assignments and switch a couple of matchups and at least just make it a little more difficult. This is probably nothing new for Dallas, but again, like I think in the middle of the game, it was pretty good. Raptors, obviously, as they have done quite a bit in these fourth quarters, they turn more heavily towards Davion Mitchell, and they put him on the opposing team's best player. In this case, that was Luka. They did have Ochai against Kyrie, which, I didn't think that Ochai did a great job in that matchup. Actually, I don't think Ochai had a great game at all in this one. So, like, that's another thing. But regardless, like, you had that. And then instead of having Jakob guarding their opposing center or like Gafford or Lively or whoever, they were putting him on PJ Washington and they're putting Scottie on the opposing center. And then that way, when they ran the pick and rolls, Scottie's able to switch onto, Kyrie or Luka. And of course, like that way, the Raptors, I mean, it still is a mismatch, but of course, it's not the same thing because like I don't think that the Mavericks are looking to give the ball up to Gafford or give the ball up to Lively and let them cook one-on-one against a smaller player. But ultimately, even just switching some of those things, I think kind of like threw a bit of a wrench into what Dallas was doing offensively. I also think that, like, if I'm going to be completely honest, like the Mavericks also felt like they were in control the whole game and they weren't necessarily like super pressed to like close it out. Like at no point did they feel pressed, you know what I mean? But still, I thought that was a good little adjustment. Again, it's like not an uncommon one. You even saw like the Celtics do a variation of this in the playoffs as well. But regardless, like I think that was just like a nice little play to sort of like neutralize things. But at the same time, though, the Raptors clearly needed more from some of their guys, and I think that like the two guys, I'm really, I think the two guys I think that like needed to do more tonight was RJ Barrett and Ochai Agbaji. RJ on the surface looked like he had a decent game, 18 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 8 of 16 from the field, 2 of 5 from 3. So what's the issue? Number one, I feel like with RJ defensively, he should not be a player that the other team picks on, and yet the Mavericks astutely realized that they should attack RJ Barrett. And there are certain things where it's like, okay, you know what? If it's like he has to guard Kyrie or Luka ISO all game, obviously he's going to get cooked. Almost anybody in the league is going to get cooked in those scenarios. That's not what I'm talking about with RJ. I'm talking about the start of the fourth quarter when it was RJ with the second unit, where Spencer Dinwiddie, he's pressing Spencer Dinwiddie, bringing up the court. Dinwiddie, before he even gets past half court, already sheds RJ and gets a step on him with just a simple crossover. RJ just completely gets turned around, gets stuck. Then he has to chase on the way back. And Dinwiddie, without even having run the offense, just like slowly dribbles more and more towards the basket with a little up fake. Again, RJ the whole time, because he was crossed up before even coming back over half court, does not get back into the play in time and ends up jumping and fouling Spencer Dinwiddie. It's like, not only is that, committing an early foul, Not only is that giving up 2 free throws, but it's Spencer Dinwiddie, which, like, all due respect, but I know RJ Barrett can guard Spencer Dinwiddie. I know there's a better effort there. I know when you look back at this game and see how many points the Mavericks scored in transition, a lot of that is on RJ for not getting back. Whether he's taking the three or he's at the top of the floor, he's not involved in the play. When the play turns after the shot, even after made baskets, the Mavs were sprinting back the other way. Now, of course, the leak out guy was PJ Washington, and the Mavericks clearly had a point of emphasis to throw crazy long passes to him. And it helps when you have Luka, who's like basically a quarterback with the basketball. But like, still, it's a transition play off a made basket. You need to get back. And these are things that are fully within RJ's control. I felt like the defense was so debilitating for him and maybe even for the team. But like, he only ended up playing 27 minutes tonight. And obviously, on an average night, you would love to play RJ Barrett 27 minutes. It's offensively, he was way worth playing more than 27 minutes. But the reason he played 27 was because he committed 5 fouls in those 27 minutes. And defensively, the level just has to be a lot higher than this. Like, this is not a first or second year player. This is a player who's played a lot in the league. He's made the playoffs a couple times too. This is something where it's like, this has to be improved. There's not a negotiable on this front because he's too good. He's too talented to not be on the floor. And it's not like he's like incapable. Again, like some of these things, like Spencer Dinwiddie just bringing the ball up half court. Like he's not even that aggressive. It's just like you just, we're unable to contain and then we're unable to get back into the play. The level of hustle and stuff like that just needs to be better. On the front of Ochai, I think that was almost even it was worse from Ochai. But whatever, he missed a corner three that was pretty important towards the end. Whatever, that's fine. And he got to close the game because you know what, he does obviously have the defensive reputation. But this is something I pointed out the last couple of games where it's just like, okay, Ochai is a guy who is on the floor for his defense. And I've even seen some of those like graphs that they put out on Twitter where it's like, oh, he's in the top right quadrant. Like that must be he's good. Like cool. Like I you know what I mean? Like I'm sure that like overall he's a good defender. Like I'm not trying to take that away from Ochai, but I do think that against these like impressive drivers, like I feel like he just in general gives too much of a gap. And instead of bodying up and pressing up the way Davion does, Davion is almost always taking away half the court from the ball handler because he's so pressed up and he's like sitting on the spin move. He causes a lot of turnovers this way when teams like when the player tries to go in the direction he's denying anyway, and he stands his ground, he's solid, he's low to the ground, he pokes the ball away. Like this is actually where Davion, his on-ball defense to me is really, really impressive. Obviously offensively, he doesn't give you much, but on-ball defense is very impressive. With Ochai, I feel like he's almost always at minimum giving the length between his shoulder and his forearm and his elbow. And it's almost that space. And sometimes it's the full length of the hand. And you know what? That's fine if he's able to really be super quick and lateral and contest and, be on bounds all the time and close out. But I feel like, especially for some of these players, like when you're giving up that much space, you're allowing them to go either direction. And it's just so much harder for him to be that effective defensively. And again, I'm like, look, it's guarding Kyrie. Like, you know what I mean? Like Kyrie beats you, whatever. Like I've seen Kyrie beat literally the best defenders in the NBA. But at the same time, you're almost beating yourself if you're not getting that close to him. You cannot give him that gap. Like against the best players, even against good players like Jaden Ivey, which he hit the game winner against them. It was the same thing. Too much space, like just too much. I would love for them. I would love for them to train together on the defensive end because Davion's on-ball defense is really impressive. And the reason I'm saying this is like, obviously, Ochai is like still overall really good defender. I'm not taking that away from him, but like to be this defensive stopper for the starting unit, which is kind of the role that he has now. His offense has come out even more great. He's obviously taking a lot of shots. And you know what? Somebody's got to guard these tough, players in the opposing team night after night. And this is my issue with like when Emmanuel quickly comes back. Who in the starting five, if he takes Ochai's spot, who in the starting five is stopping a Luka? Maybe Scottie. Okay, Scottie's on the Luka assignment. Then who's stopping Kyrie? And it's like, yeah, is it going to be RJ? Is it going to be IQ? Is it going to be like it's not Gradey? Gradey actually did okay when he was on switches, but like ultimately that he's still a guy who is being put on the weaker players. If Ochai wants to stay in that starting five, like yet he can't just be a good defender. He needs to be a great defender. And I do feel like that distance that he's giving these guys, that's the difference right now between him being a good and a great defender. And yeah, I mean, I think again, like that's actually one of the things I don't mind about losing is just like you can learn some of these lessons from losses. And like I think it'll be very valuable for some of these guys to be able to sort of watch some of the tape back and just like get marginally improved. On the other end, I think offensively, like, sometimes when you watch these games, you look at the, oh, by the way, of course, if you're watching, you could drop questions in the chat. Sorry, I forgot to say this. Very much just like very attached into the game right now. But of course, if you leave the questions in the chat, we'll get to them in the second half of the show. Also hit the like on the stream, blah, blah, blah. You already know the deal. With in some of these games, you do watch it and it's like, okay, how easily the Mavericks get their offense, right? And that's because you have a Luka to play through, you have a Kyrie to play through. These guys are creating offense almost out of thin air. Like for a bulk of this game, I thought the Raptors were moving the ball great. They had 36 assists tonight. They were cutting, they were executing, whatever. And then they would just miss, or they would go to the basket. And Dallas obviously had some really great shot blockers as well. Versus on the other end, the Raptors are really scrambling and hustling. They're doing whatever they can. And some of these guys are just like making the craziest shots. Like when you look at the 3-point battle tonight, the Raptors went 15 of 39. Dallas went 17 of 45. Like Raptors actually shot a better percentage. They obviously made 2 fewer, but they shot a better percentage. That didn't feel like that though. It did not feel like that. Kyrie just being able to sort of pull up whenever he wants to. Luka wanted to pull up whenever he wants to. The crazy, absurd passes. And of course, like just their transition attack. I mean, honestly, I could have lived with Kyrie and Luka doing what they did tonight because you're never going to stop them from giving you 59 points combined with 15 assists. You know what I mean? Like, you're never going to stop that. But what you could have stopped was all these PJ Washington leakouts. Spencer Dinwiddie going to the foul line 8 times. I mean, Spencer Dinwiddie went 1 for 6 from the field with 8 of 8 from the foul line. Like, like those moments of sloppiness, like that needs to be cleaned up. And that's the maturity on the Raptors part. And, I think that, it's all things considered, the Raptors actually played a decent game. Like, it's just the separating factor sometimes, though, is that sort of like superstar level talent. And that's where it's just like, if the Raptors want to keep playing the way they're playing, that's going to be fine. Like, I think the Raptors will be super competitive against like mid-tier teams and below, right? Like bad teams, I think the Raptors, can certainly like a Washington. Although Washington did beat Denver today, which is pretty hilarious, but obviously like, that's an anomaly. But like, like if they played Washington, like I feel like the Raptors will do fine against Washington. You know what I mean? If they play teams in their own tier, like we just saw Indiana, Miami, they're probably like a slight tier above the Raptors, but like the Raptors can clearly play and contend with those teams, no problem, especially as they get healthier and healthier. But against the top end teams, that's the ceiling is going to be like the game might look like it was only lost by 7 points, but Dallas being able to be in control at all times because of that superstar level talent, like that's where either Scottie's got to grow up into that level, RJ it rather improbably needs to grow up to that level, or the Raptors need to find some way of acquiring that talent. And of course, that's where, coming back to the theme of the whole season, when you're thinking about like, okay, the Raptors are in a developmental year, we wouldn't mind if we got a better pick. It's just like, how else are you going to acquire that kind of talent? You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, maybe. Like Dallas is actually kind of a weird example because the year that Luka was in the draft, I would say arguably they got a little lucky because how do you get Luka Doncic, who's like a generational player, with the 5th pick? You know what I mean? But ultimately, like they were obviously pretty bad. Dirk's career was winding down to a halt, and they realized that they needed to get high in the draft because they had somebody in mind, which was Luka. Obviously, they were able to swindle the Hawks with that trade with Trae Young, whatever. But like, still, they put themselves in that position where they could even be in play for something like that, right? Beyond that, though, I feel like the Mavericks are such a weird team building because when you look at the roster and how it's been acquired, Kyrie getting, acquired in a trade when his value was probably at the very lowest. Before coming to Dallas, Kyrie was like a real headache for Brooklyn. And some of that was on Kyrie, some of that was on Brooklyn, shared responsibility. But clearly they saw an opportunity to trade for a player who, relative to what he can do on the basketball court, was heavily undervalued. I think they traded like Spencer Dinwiddie to the Nets for Kyrie with some other like just like a spare pick. And so like it wasn't like a Kyrie Irving package. You know what I mean? Like it was like, take this guy off our hands and make it look respectable. You know what I mean? Like they got Kyrie off like a really good deal. They see the market and they're like, you know what, Klay Thompson, like Klay quietly had 20 points tonight. Didn't even feel like he dominated, barely had the ball. Klay Thompson has 20 points in 25 minutes, goes 8 of 16 from the field. They signed him in free agency for the mid-level exception. And whatever you think about Klay, you don't think 20 points on 25 minutes for a 4-time champion on a mid-level exception is not great value? Of course it is. right? Derek Lively. How did they get Derek Lively? Well, of course they tanked, but they tanked for like a week. They tanked towards the end of one season for a week to drop out of the play-in. And then they got into a position where once again they can make a trade. They made a trade with OKC, swapping 10 and 12 so that they can get Derek Lively, and OKC got Casey Wallace and probably some other picks from stuff like that. But that was clearly a great acquisition. Then they looked at last year's trade deadline. They were like, well, who's undervalued across the league? And it's like Charlotte Hornets players. I'm sure not a lot of teams were like looking at Charlotte being like, oh, those are pieces that we can really use to bolster our team. I mean, they actually did technically send Hayward to OKC. They should send Rozier to Miami and also PJ Washington to Dallas. But like out of all three of those acquisitions, clearly the best acquisition was PJ Washington to Dallas. And all they cost him was Grant Williams, right? And like you look at the acquisition for Daniel Gafford, I don't even think they put a first in that deal. And Gafford is a really good center. Like he's not like an elite center who's going to play all your minutes, but in a platoon with him and Derek Lively, the fact that you got 48 minutes of like super athletic lob catchers who can block a shot as well, that sounds great, especially relative to the players you have. So I don't know. I think they've actually done a really good job of team building. They're kind of really on a roll in terms of the guys that they brought in here. Shouts to Amon on Twitter who pointed this out, and that's sort of like what spurred this. So I want to give her respect for this. But like, yeah, seriously, like Dallas has actually done a really good job. But of course, it's also much easier to do that once you know you have that cornerstone piece. Do the Raptors know that they have that cornerstone piece? I think they believe that they have that with Scottie Barnes. But also in these games, it's like I don't necessarily feel like we're going punch for punch between Scottie and Luka. They're very different players, of course, but like, and Scottie, by the way, played a really good game. You know what I mean? Like he knocked down the threes when he needed to. There was the 2 threes that really pulled the Raptors back into the game. I think the context of when he makes those was really important too. His playmaking was great. He set a career high with 14 assists tonight. Honestly, probably could have got like easily 17 or 18. Like he threw some really great passes that weren't converted tonight. So like, that could easily been like a higher margin. But in terms of that scoring separation, that's where it's like, I don't feel like Scottie has that right now, and RJ doesn't have that right now. And that's where it's like, if you look ahead into the draft, maybe you can get somebody of that profile to join your team. But again, like, I think Dallas is like an example of whatever you want. If you want to say you like tanking, you can point to Dallas and be like, clearly that's a team that was bolstered by tanking. Or if you're a guy who doesn't like tanking, you're probably like, look at Dallas. They're clearly a team that were able to fill out their whole roster with like pretty minimal tanking, all things considered. So they're going to be an interesting team regardless. But yeah, I mean, this was a fun game though. This was a really fun game. A lot of good things came out of it. We're gonna take a quick break. I want to hear what you guys had to say about this game. So leave your questions in the chat. Hit the like on the stream. We're gonna take a quick break, listen to one of our beloved sponsors, and when we come back, we'll take your questions.
Hey man.
Hey buddy.
Just recently hit the big 4-0. What about you, bro?
A little more recently 4-0, but we are both in the 40 club.
Let me tell you, man, being an adult really comes with its share of challenges.
Definitely. I think both you and I are homeowners, and I think we're both also dealing with mortgages in life.
Yeah, man. Mortgage rates, choosing the right terms, dealing with paperwork. It can be really overwhelming,
I still don't know how that works.
Well, listen, that's where our friends at Dominion Lending Centers come in, man. They make the whole process simple and stress-free. Whether you're renewing your mortgage, hunting for the best rates, or if you just need advice, they're here to help, bro.
You know what? I am looking for that advice, and I think that's why I'm going to visit www.dominionlending.ca.
Yeah, man. www.dominionlending.ca. Take the guesswork out of your mortgage and step into financial confidence with our friends at Dominion Lending by our side.
Shouts to Jerome and Alex once again for owning homes. Shouts to Dominion Lending. And of course, it is time now for the Tangerine Fan Inbox. Tangerine is the official bank of the Toronto Raptors, foundational partner of WNBA Canada and NBA Canada. And of course, they're not just fans of basketball, they're fans of basketball. They're fans of fans who have their own nickname for each guy that's starting 5, or fans who stand 5 inches from the TV all night, or fans who can recreate every player's layup package while sitting on their couch. That would be more impressive if you're a Mavericks fan than a Raptor fan. But still, if you're hearing this, there's no doubting your commitment. Fans like you are at the heart of what makes this game great. So for this year, for the Raptors' 30th season, Tangerine is turning the spotlight from the court to the stands and celebrating the way Raptor fans support their teams, because this is how we fan. To learn more, visit tangerine.ca/basketball. It's my favorite segment here. We're taking your questions on the show. What's our first question, producer Alex Wong? First one, LA2 class. Is Scottie a potential all-star reserve this year if he keeps this up? Or will he not get in due to the team's poor record? I honestly think that, like, Scottie is like, assuming he stays healthy from now until the All-Star game, like he should be in the All-Star game. Like it'll be a snub if he doesn't make the All-Star game. His stats are pretty good. They're really good, actually. I mean, like he's flirting with triple doubles every night. I think that maybe the missed games here or there, maybe even the fact that he started the season a little bit slow in the first week wasn't the greatest, but like ultimately the bulk of what he's done this season, especially since coming back from the injury, has been great. So I think Scottie should make the All-Star game. It's gonna be tough in the East though, like just in the sense that like the list of candidates aren't really that long. You know what I mean? Like obviously a bunch of Celtics will make it, a bunch of Knicks will make it, but like Orlando, they're they're like near they're top 3 in the East right now. But like I guess are they top 3? They're top 3 in the East, but it's like you can't really put Paolo in the game because he's been injured. And then now Franz Wagner goes down with the exact same injury. So like that's 2 all-star spots that probably would have gone to those guys that are kind of dashed. I mean, obviously some Cavs will be in there too, but yeah, I actually think Scottie has a really good shot at making the All-Star game again. And honestly, more importantly, he's playing at an All-Star level. There's no doubt about that. Next question. Carter. Question: when IQ comes back, will we see less of Point Scottie? Point Scottie has been great. How will IQ fit back into the lineup? I think honestly, the question of how IQ will fit back in the lineup is a very interesting one. Because again, I think defensively, maybe coming into the season, this is a problem that I was more fixated on. Clearly, over the bulk of the season, because of the injuries, the Raptors have obviously had to juggle so many other things with the lineup that you haven't even seen the actual like intended starting lineup. But for me, I think the question is on defense. On offense, I don't think IQ really changes that much for you in terms of like disrupting and taking stuff off the table. I think it's a purely additive add to put IQ back in the lineup. Maybe it takes 1 or 2 games for him to adjust and adapt or whatever. Obviously, he's missed a lot of time this season, so there's that aspect. But also, I think the 3-point shooting that'll come from this, the pick and roll play that'll come from this. I mean, it's great to see like Scottie and Jakob play pick and roll, but a lot of those pick and rolls are trying to go downhill towards the basket, which is nothing wrong with that. But it's like IQ brings a different. I mentioned with the pull up 3-point shooting. I think that he can probably increase the pace as well. Probably even take care of some of the turnovers because the Raptors do have a habit of throwing some bad passes. As great as Scottie was with the playmaking, there was one pass he was trying to make towards the end where Jakob had his man sealed and he tried to force feed it into Yak and he just like threw it way over. You know what I mean? Like some of those things, I do feel like at times I do feel a lack of a true point with the group. But on the defensive end, that's where I'm worried. Because again, like you're already seeing the effects of the Raptors getting healthier has also weirdly meant the Raptors are becoming less resistive defensively. Scottie coming back really changed and helped the defense. For a stretch there, the Raptors were really pretty good on defense for like a week or so. But then like Gradey coming back to the starting lineup, there's more weaknesses on defense. Kelly coming back to the lineup, there's more weaknesses introduced on defense. So like on the whole, finding their balance and finding the right sort of like mix. And again, it's not necessarily about winning all the games this year, but even long term, because all these guys you're hoping to be here long term for you, right? Scottie, RJ, IQ, Gradey, Jakob. You're hoping that at least here for next year, right? But can they defend together? And if they can't defend together, then you really have a big issue on your hands once again. So, it'll be a question. But again, I just would love to see IQ come back to his IQ, man. I missed you. Like I can't believe we played the whole season without you so far. Next one from Tina: is it just me or does Jakobi seem very poised for a rookie? Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that's Jacoby's not doing right now is knocking down the three. And of course, like he was drafted to be a shooter, and he hasn't hit a high percentage just yet. But in his own way, because I don't think he really plays like Gradey, but in his own way, it kind of reminds me of how Gradey was last year. At the same time, though, it does clear to me that it's like, despite him not knocking down threes, which would be like a complete death blow for most players who are drafted as shooters, he's still contributing. I still think on a defensive end, like he's making an impact. Like he's active, he gets into the ball. He's quick. He tries to get around screens. Like there's an intent and there's a want to. I think that's been good. On the defensive end, I don't necessarily see him getting picked on, for example. On the offensive end, where he's shown that poise that Tina is trying to talk about here is like, especially off closeouts, off the dribble, he's been able to really, finish on under duress. And that's like, 1-2 dribble, get into the mid range. mid-range shot, 1-2 dribble, force a rotation, swing, make the next pass. Okay, you know what? There's a transition opportunity. You're going to take a dribble. You're going to slow up. You're going to see the guys coming at you. You're going to brace yourself, take the bump, and finish over the contact. And probably not going to call because you're the rookie. But like those things already to me look pretty good. And I think once the threes start dropping at the rate that they should be dropping, and of course it's like an adjustment period for him to become a very efficient knockdown shooter. Because not only is the warm-up report from me telling you that like when I see Jakob warm up, it's not like he's like knocking down all the shots. Like trust me, there's certainly a difference between like knockdown shooters and like guys who shoot a lot or like guys who are aspiring shooters, right? Like he's more inconsistent right now. But we do know the form and the shot looks good. So like you're hoping that it comes around to the point where if he is already doing what he's doing, plus he's also a 40% three-point shooter, that's where you sort of feel pretty good. But I really like Jakob. And I also like the fact that the Raptors have really prioritized his development. Since he's come back and he's been healthier, the Raptors are putting him right back into rotation and he's playing. Doesn't really matter if he's missing shots, especially if he's giving the other stuff on the floor and he's not forcing it. Keep playing him. Keep playing him. Keep developing him. And they're right now Darko is getting pretty good production from Jakob, from Gradey, and from Ochai in general. Maybe not all three on the same night, but like he's finding a way to give those guys more reps. And it's I guess the onus is on those guys to keep improving and making the most of those developmental reps. Next one from Padre 3000 shouts that Will, does Luka complain to the refs more than anyone in the league? I honestly thought Luka was in a great mood today. I didn't really feel like Luka was as complaining as usual. I've seen Luka come to Toronto I've seen him like complain a lot more than this. Today it seemed like he was in a really great mood. Referee obviously was a little inconsistent. I mean, like at times they were letting everything go, but they're also at times calling everything really tight. So, I'm sure that can be frustrating. They seem to be letting a lot go near the basket, which certainly I think helped Dallas because they had better shot blockers. But like ultimately, like it wasn't like a sparkling ref display. At the same time, though, I didn't really feel like Luka was complaining that much. In fact, it was over the bulk of the game, the frustration was coming from the Raptors side, where it was like Darko taking a tech. And honestly, like shouts to Darko for taking that tech, man. Like when Darko gets mad, it almost looks cartoonish. But at the same time, like I like that he comes to the backing of his players, even though he seems like his rate with challenges, his success rate is like quite low. Even the judgment to like in terms of the leverage of when he's using the challenges is also like pretty inconsistent or like pretty much not idealized. But I feel like every time he's using the challenge, it feels like he's coming to the defense of his players. So I feel like, yeah, I mean, and he's not overdoing, like he's not like beat red on the side like Nick Nurse, like in the face of the referee like all the time. Like he certainly picks his spots. Darko is generally a pretty mild-mannered guy. But in those moments where he does sort of like lose it and he's got that cartoonish scowl on his face, like it's like it does fire me up a little bit too, man. But yeah, I actually didn't think Luka complained to the refs that much today. I don't know. Maybe we saw a different game, but yeah, and maybe in general, yeah, for sure. Because there's two types of Luka games. There's the one where the great Luka, which is like super fun to watch. Like today, even like obviously as a Raptor fan, like whatever, they got killed by Luka, but like it was also super fun to watch this because of the passes, because of the shot making, because of the audacity, right? Like all that was really good, and he was in a good mood. But there was also like last year in the playoffs, Luka, when obviously they made it all into the finals. But like I felt like miserable watching him at times, right? He was like angry, he was like spitting, his knee just kept bleeding through his like leg sleeve for some reason all the time. Like it was just like that didn't necessarily feel, and he was certainly a lot more complaining and a lot less defending. And especially in the finals, like, I mean, whatever, like Boston was much better than Dallas was, but like the complaining on that series certainly did not help my appreciation of Luka in the game. But today I actually thought it was more manageable. So maybe in general, yes, but tonight, no. So next question. Tyler, Shanghai 360 or Manchu Walk? Yeah, tonight actually I was with the Pounder Rock crew. Shout out to Joe Wolfon and Joseph Casharo. They were like, yo, you guys want to grab some dinner beforehand? I was like, okay, cool. So obviously, like if you're at Scotiabank Arena, you're not going to eat in the arena, man. Let's be honest. It's like, unless you're in one of those private boxes, which I know the majority of you guys are not in those private boxes. Don't do yourself a favor. Don't eat in the concourse area, man. Like just before the game, go like 10, 15 minutes earlier, go to Union Station, and that whole area, there's actually a ton of food options. So they were like, yo, you want to get pregame food? Sure. We walk around, and I'm like, you know what? Today, I'm not going to get Shanghai 360. Today, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to walk around. I'm going to value my options. There's lots of good stuff over there. Whatever. Like they open a Shake Shack. It takes like 2 hours. Don't go to Shake Shack. Actually, that will take forever. But like, there's literally like 20 restaurants down there. I took the lap. Cash is like, I'm gonna get some sushi. Wolfon's like, oh, I'll get a whole ramen. Which are like, what? We're gonna eat ramen in a train terminal? What is this, Tokyo? But like, yeah. And then ultimately, I did the whole walk, and I was like, yeah, who am I kidding? And then went back to Shanghai 360. Shanghai 360 is like not even close to Manchu Walk. Don't even disrespect Shanghai 360 comparing to Manchu Walk. Manchu Walk is like, yeah, I mean, it's Manchu Walk is like if you're desperate. Shanghai 360, you look forward to that stuff, man. You come on, man. Let's have some respect here. You know what I mean? Shanghai 360 on a different level. We'll bring on another Shanghai 360 enthusiast soon, actually, if there's more questions. But yeah, Alex, is it time? Is it time? You turning on your camera, bro?
Yo, what's up, man?
What's going on?
Feel like you're disrespecting Manchukuo like crazy with that assessment.
Make a case that Manchukuo is anywhere.
Nah, but like Shanghai 360 is like from this generation, like LeBron or whoever. And I feel like Manchukuo is like Jordan.
Yo,
this is like a Jordan Kobe discussion. Like,
this is a crazy disrespect.
Did you have Manchukuo like growing up?
When was prime Manchukuo?
Prime Manchukuo was probably like in the 90s or like early 2000s.
What are we even talking about, bro? Why am I eating food from the 90s?
I think there's still a Manchukuo.
Yo, some of that chicken does feel like it's from the 90s, man.
I feel like there's still a Manchukuo at Dufferin Mall that's really good.
There's also 360 in Dufferin Mall though.
Oh, okay. 360 might have taken over. They might be Marlowe to Manchukuo's Avon. They've taken over the corners.
That's disrespecting, bro. I feel like Manchukuo, especially today's Manchukuo, is just it actually is like you're guaranteed to get heartburn afterwards. You're guaranteed to feel a little bit ashamed. The portions aren't as big. Like, I don't know, man. 360 is fresher right now, man. That's not close.
Also, I wouldn't know because you keep getting Chinese food without me. So.
I mean, this is not me. This is really a credential issue. If we did only have one credential to the game, I feel like we'd be getting 360 together all the time because that was literally
so funny to just meet you outside the arena. Anyways,
what's up? What
was I doing here? Oh yeah, so I wanted to let you know. So the Dallas Mavericks just won their 7th in a row. They're now 16-8 on the season. They're top 10 in offense and defensive rating. Looking good right now. And right now on Betway, their over-under is 51.5 wins, and the over pays out 1.75 odd. You know, coming into the season, I was kind of fading the Mavs a little bit. I think the way they performed in the finals just really just kind of left an impression on me. But of course, that was against the Celtics. Just watching them play tonight, like that's a real cohesive team out there. And I always forget how great Luka is. Bro. Until you watch them up close like this. Yeah. So I'm thinking the Mavs are, unless they obviously injuries aside, I'm thinking this is a team that looks locked in to cruise over 50 wins right now.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is what I was trying to tell you before the season, man. I was like, you were like, who's the second best team in the Western Conference? You know what I mean? And we all kind of
Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, like I like the Denver to bounce back. You're a big fan of Minnesota for a while.
Well, I didn't know Minnesota was gonna rip their team apart.
Yeah, it turns out
Tim
not to be a great
got
decision.
an answer for his war crimes, man.
But like, obviously we knew OKC was near the top, but like my case was like I thought Dallas had a case to be the best team in the Western Conference, even just regular season wise. Like I feel like balance wise, like they have done a great job. Like their front office is like 7 for the last 7. You know what I mean? Like their front office looking like Barry Bonds right now with the bases loaded.
Yo,
and Nico's at the plate, man.
Nico, the former Nike exec.
Yeah, not OVO Nico.
Should we hire like the SVP exec to replace Masai? Maybe we'll go 7 for 7 next, man.
Yeah, speaking of SVP, man, guess who's gonna be rocking a new pair of Trae Young threes on the court?
Brother. I love how you rep the most random players on your shoes, man.
Well, it's because SVP sells the most random gear, man.
The last 3 players you've repped are like Trae, Paul George, and like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah, and I play like none of those guys.
Oh
to be clear, I need to rock the Georges Niang threes.
How do you like the Mavericks over 51.5 wins here?
I like it. I actually really like it. Obviously, it's gonna be tough in the Western Conference, but at the same time, I really do believe in this Dallas team. They look focused, they look sharper, and they've gone over. Honestly, like their win total right now is not even that great because they lost a lot of really close games to start the season too. Like they're actually better than I feel like what their record says so far. But
they look good, man. I mean, Derek Lively, I know I was trying to fade him as well, but he looks great. Clay hasn't been that great, but again, he doesn't need to
Yeah,
be on
doesn't
this
even need
team.
to. Yeah.
And is Spencer Dinwiddie just bouncing between the Brooklyn Nets and Dallas Mavericks his whole career? Every time I watch the NBA, he's on one of those teams. I'm pretty sure he's been involved in every single D'Angelo Russell, Kyrie Irving, or James Harden trade. I swear to God.
Spencer Dinwiddie's career is incredible, man.
You know, his new nickname is Ping Pong, man. He ping-ponging between these two teams. How's he on the Mavs again, man? How did he end up on the Mavs again?
When we play the basketball reference game in the future,
yeah,
and we do
like,
Spencer
Brooklyn,
Dinwiddie, it'll be the
Brooklyn,
easiest
Dallas,
one, I swear.
Brooklyn, Dallas.
Yeah, this guy went from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Was in Brooklyn from 2016 to 2021. Then he goes to Washington and then Dallas in the same year somehow.
Right.
Plays in Dallas for 2 years.
In the Porzingis trade.
Yeah, then he gets traded back to Brooklyn. He's there for 2 years, and now he's back with Dallas, and also quietly was with the Lakers last year. Like, what?
Because he was traded to the Raptors, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. We technically cut him. Oh, maybe this was a revenge game, actually.
Wait, what was the deal that got him to Toronto?
What was the deal that got him to Toronto?
This was just a random
was
trade
this
that got him here?
Was it Otto Porter?
Someone in the chat could let us know too.
No, I mean, I'm on his page. I'll scroll down. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm so confused. But
that was gonna be so happy with this whole conversation. Oh, Dennis Schroeder, of course. Dennis Schroeder and Thad Young.
Oh, right. It was the Dennis trade.
We traded Dennis Schroeder and Thad Young for Spencer Dinwiddie.
Right.
And then we just straight waived him. Man, that's the Raptors are like, yeah, Dennis, we're good, thanks.
And now he's back in the Mavs.
Grand opening, grand closing. They're like, no more Dennis Schroeder appearances on the Raptors show, man. That was crazy. Actually thinking about, imagine how you got to feel as a player to be like, I got traded for another player that they cut immediately. It's like, why don't you just cut me then?
Yeah,
I mean, I guess the Raptors couldn't have cut him because he had 2 years on the contract.
But some cash in
that's
that
crazy.
Deal, I'm not gonna lie. I'm pretty sure they got some cash in that deal.
Yo, Streets is saying you gotta crank your volume again, man.
Oh my God, again?
Mm-hmm.
We need Jerome to help us out, man. Anyways, I guess I'm out of here. My only observation is that Spencer Dinwiddie is only on 2 teams.
It's pretty incredible how he's finesse going back and forth. How I go from 6 to 23 like I'm LeBron, but it's how I go from Brooklyn to Dallas like I'm Dinwiddie.
Peace out.
All right, peace made it. There you go. So, Mavs look solid. Raptors, honestly, Raptors didn't play badly. It's just like, I just don't feel like we're kind of on the same level. But at the same time, they made a game of it. It was pretty impressive. And once again, I'm really happy to see Gradey back in the lineup. It's just, I was saying that after the last post game show, it's just like, make sure you don't forget about Gradey. Don't forget about him. Like he is. I'm on a team that certainly is not like flush with scores. Like guys can maybe like increase their usage, like, and on the right matchups, like RJ can go to the basket a lot, or Scottie can honestly, Scottie's offense comes and goes a little bit, but it's been pretty consistent. It's between like 18 and 25 points. Like, but Gradey is that X factor for me. It's like when he's hot, like all of a sudden it changes a lot for you, and it makes defenses actually bend. I feel like even as much as defenses look at RJ, they look at Scottie, they're not bending their defenses as much for those guys. But when Grady's hot, and as with any shooter, people are going to start to really try to corral them. So just don't forget about Gradey, but it was really fun to watch him tonight. So to wrap up, your 3 stars from tonight's game. First star is going to Gradey Dick, 27 points, 34 minutes, 8 of 21 shooting, 5 of 14 from 3, 6 of 6 from the free throw line. I love the fact that he got 14 threes up. Like, that's the type of aggression I want to see from maybe not the number of 14, but like it wasn't like any of these were forced. You know what I mean? Like, I thought it was all in rhythm. It was all confident. Obviously, some of them were more open. Some of them were obviously a little bit less open. But like that aggression to hunt for those shots, I loved it. Like that was perfect from Gradey Dick tonight. And of course, on a different night, he probably finishes a little bit stronger at the basket. But yeah, 27 points for him. I think the one thing with Gradey is he expends so much energy on the offensive end. Does he have some left for the defensive end? If he's a guy on the perimeter, is he going to drift back and, be back in transition? Transition defense for the Raptors just needs to improve across the board. Like tonight, you could even argue the Raptors lost straight up because of transition defense. That's how much that's important for me. But like offensively, Gradey was supernova tonight, man. Shouts to Gradey. I call him Oasis, man, because he's Champagne Supernova. Your second star, I'm going to go to Jakob. Jakob was just awesome tonight. 20 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals. A big part of like what made the Raptors sort of like get better over the course of the game offensively was going to Jakob more often, and whether he was sort of pinging passes back and forth. Like there's one play that was super sweet where I think maybe Mobile got the ball into Jakob in the post, and then Mobile cut through the lane. And it was kind of like, I think the team was the defense was probably expecting to cut through the lane and then maybe clear out to the corner. And as Mobile cut through the lane, he was maybe just 1 or 2 steps past Jakob at the elbow. Jakob just threw the alley-oop in a crowd to Mobile, and Mobile caught it above everyone else and dunked it with 2 hands. Like, that's actually, for me, it's like a great sign of coaching, and that, like, Darko has been saying the last couple games, Mobile, especially with Kelly and Jakob now, obviously both healthy and both playing, he's going to have to learn how to play more as the 4 rather than as the 5. And that's a great example of how you can do that, right? Like getting off the ball and finishing at the rim, or getting off the ball and catching and shooting from 3. And those were really good things for Mobile tonight. But yeah, Scott, I thought Jakob just did a great job overall. Like he had a really good game. I mean, your third star, I mean, it's okay. It's certainly Scottie Barnes, but you can clearly tell the big part of me wants to give it to Mobile. I thought Mobile played an awesome game tonight, but Scottie, you can't even deny it, man. I mean, 19 points, 8 rebounds, 14 assists, 3 steals, a block. It's a testament to how talented and how much we believe in Scottie, that like even after a game like this, you're like, yeah, but we probably could have got a little bit more. It's like, yeah, you know what? That's the standard, because Scottie's standard isn't like compared to Mobile or compared to John or to Jakob Poeltl or even RJ Barrett. All due respect, is the comparison now is like, okay, how did you compare to Luka tonight? How did you compare to Kyrie tonight? It's like that's what happens when you're number one. But I mean, when you take a step back, he also played a really good game. I thought his distribution in this game was awesome. He's a plus 10 in this game as well. So, I mean, if you even think about it, 37 minutes, he was plus 10. That means in the 11 minutes that he was off, the Raptors were minus 17. Like, yeah, actually, that feels about right, to be honest. So, Scottie was obviously huge. I mean, to be honest, Scottie was the Raptors' best player tonight, but you can't give him the first every night. 19, 14 assists. 8 rebounds, 3 steals, a block. 8 of 17 from the field, 3 of 7 from 3. The only thing I didn't like, 0 of 0 from the free throw line, but whatever. Your Gerald Henderson award winner. They can go to a lot of different options here. I will, man, I don't even know. I mean, the whole Mavs team is good, so I'll give it to Spencer Dinwiddie, man. How this man score 11 points on 1 made field goal. It is a little disgusting to look at, but he did ultimately have a really good game and was a big separating factor against the Raptors tonight. Finally, your most important guy, that is brought to you by Greta Bar YYZ. I want to let you know that Greta is located at 590 King Street West at King and Portland in the heart of the city. I'm sure Greta is bumping right now. It's a Saturday night. It's in that King West crowd. And it's a great place to go for pregame, postgame, during the game, to watch games. Of course, it's a barcade as well. So, if you can watch the games or you can play the games at Greta Bar YYZ. Your most important guy from tonight's performance, it's actually my barber. Shouts to P. Shouts to P for getting me fixed up before the game. Yeah, I was looking crazy on these pods. I mean, it's not like I have like a particularly difficult haircut, I would say. I mean, I'm not a barber, so I can't tell you. But shouts to P over at King's Landing. Got me right before the game. I was like, yo, man, are you not coming to this game? Because, not to expose what P does, but like he's got some pretty famous clientele that were in town tonight. And ultimately he did actually end up going to the game. So, but shouts to P though, at King's Landing. It's a very, very popular barbershop at College and Bathurst. And, more than anything else, it's just a really cool atmosphere. And the guys there are really great. But big shouts to Purnell. I will see you at the Run on Tuesday. I will be trying to stop your crossover into a mid-range pull-up. This man, DeMar DeRozan from the mid-range. A fun game tonight, honestly. I'm not mad. I'm not mad at the referees. I know some people are mad at the referees. I can't be mad at the rest of a game like this, man. It wasn't the referee's fault. The Raptors, I mean, you want to blame somebody, blame Luka and Kyrie. All right, those guys are too damn good for the Raptors. But it was a fun game. I'm really excited to see the next one. I actually do think Raptors playing the Knicks coming up. The Knicks are in a really good mode as well. Although did they lose to the Pistons today? I did see they were losing to the Pistons. Yeah, they did lose to the Pistons. Okay, maybe they're not necessarily in like that good of a mode, but they clearly obviously are on a pretty good rhythm here tonight aside. I think the Raptors will do a lot better against the Knicks. And I think it'll be a closer game than the last two have been against OKC and Dallas. Quite frankly, those two have been a little humbling. I do think against the Knicks, the Raptors can get to the paint a lot more. And that's what creates a lot of success for the Raptors. Scottie going to the basket, RJ going to the basket. RJ's going to be super motivated going up against the Knicks again. And, of course, the Knicks don't necessarily have the rim protection to sort of really change things for you. So I'm looking forward to that. But, of course, we'll get to that when Monday rolls around. Of course, we'll be going live after every game. So make sure you hit the subscribe button to the Hello and Welcome podcast. We are doing our best to go live after every single game. I'm literally leaving the game at halftime. I'm watching Luka and Kyrie cook the way they're cooking. And I'm like, I'm leaving this somehow till I can come back here and be live after every game. So especially if you enjoyed it, especially if you liked conversing with fellow fans in the chat, just hit a like on your way out. Appreciate it so much. And yeah, we'll have your regularly scheduled programming next week. Jack Armstrong, we'll see him on the pod. The Pound of Rock boys, me and Alex will be catching up as well. So of course, you'll have your weekly shows too, but especially the post-game shows. Just hit the subscribe button because it'll tell you when we're going live. And that way I don't have to beg you every single time. So thanks everyone for listening. This has been the Hill Wonka Podcast presented by Betway.